You're listening to Dr. Emma and me on the Tudors Dynasty and Beyond podcast. And now, here are your hosts.
Hello and welcome back to the Tudors Dynasty and Beyond podcast. I'm Rebecca Larson, and joining me as she does every Thursday is my co-host and my favorite historical troublemaker, Dr. Emma. Welcome.
Hi, Rebecca. How are you?
I'm good. Do you like how I called you a troublemaker?
Yes, I think that's pretty accurate. I'm not gonna, it's
Yeah.
okay. One has to embrace what one is.
Yeah, I totally agree. I feel like in our own ways, we are both historical troublemakers, right?
Yeah. Yeah, you hide behind me, but you're also like stirring the pot, Rebecca. We know that.
I'm like peeking over your shoulder, like, yeah, I'm over here too.
Yeah. Listen to this. I mean, you dubbed Henry VIII the Tool. I didn't, you come up with all these names.
Well, he was a tool. Let's just be real about that. Before we go too far into this conversation, it was brought to my attention by a listener after the last episode. And I'm sorry, I don't remember who the listener was, but they had mentioned that they didn't realize that these episodes are available in video format too.
That's why, well, I do my hair every time for nothing. Come on, guys, look at the videos.
I know, you work so hard. You wear
So
these
hard.
beautiful accent necklaces like the one that you have on today.
Yeah. Did you notice that?
I
Is
did.
It blinding you with my bling?
It's very Cleopatra-esque today, I must say.
Thank you. That's what I was going for, because I look exactly like Cleopatra.
Exactly. That's what I was thinking. I was like, wow, they could be twins.
Yeah, exactly. Parallel lives, Dr. Emma and Cleopatra.
Oh, this is a good start to the show, isn't it? But I just wanted people to know that it is available in video. And I think for video watching, YouTube and I think Spotify are the only two platforms that show video. I don't know if I know Apple doesn't.
No, but it looks pretty cool in Spotify, to be honest. I use a lot of Spotify. And it looks, it's in a little format if you're watching it on your screen, on your phone.
Mm-hmm.
And I usually, I don't know, I do a bit of both, but I usually, when I'm listening to a podcast, I do a lot of listening to podcasts in the car, so people can also listen to it there. So, the video is an option, but you can always just listen to us.
Yeah. And I know there are some people who watch on YouTube who like to stream it on their TV and watch us like life size. I'm not sure why they would do that, but
I usually get up really early. Rebecca knows this, and I'm one of the first usually watching because in this part of my life, I used to be able to sleep in, but I don't have any more time left. So I need to wake up bright and early. Yeah, I thought there was so many comments in those two episodes. I was surprised at how many comments there were. Not that the idea wasn't amazing. Like, I know you were trying to say that you were surprised that the idea was amazing, but it is. I was really surprised at all the comments, the positive feedback, all the suggestions, and we're making a list because you guys are doing the work for us. Thank you. I remember especially Stephen from Australia who mentioned, when are we going to talk about cool guys?
I know. And I always feel like I have a moment where I groan a little bit. Like, haven't we talked about guys enough?
Cool guys, not the tool and the crybaby Philip the handsome. Cool guys.
Yeah. That's fair.
A lot of so many historical cool guys.
I do think we need to include guys. I do. The focus has been on women, and I always focus on women, but we can't forget that the men did have a part in the 16th century too.
And all these women were marrying men, were daughters of men, and they became powerful because the men allowed it, because it was a patriarchal society. So some men were changing their mindset about the capabilities of women because of this change. And we've talked about it in humanism and education. In the elites, we're talking about, obviously, we're talking always about people in the high nobility and royalty, but it changes the mindset. And I'm thinking of, for example, Fernando of Aragon allowing his daughter to be, Catherine of Aragon, to be an ambassador, something that had never happened before. So you had to have a pretty open mindset as a guy to do this. And then we see how others, like Henry VIII, has trouble with this when his daughter is going to inherit Mary, and he just can't take it. So not all the guys are the same,
Yeah, that's just like all the women.
That's a phrase I never thought I'd say in my life. Nah, I'm only joking, guys. We love the guys, don't we, Rebecca?
No, we do. We definitely do. And I think maybe do we want to tease an upcoming episode that we're going to have?
Well, maybe we were working on something already. You know, Stephen had a great idea, so we've
Yeah.
reached out to some cool guys that we know, and maybe one of them will be in the show pretty soon.
It's going to be so exciting, you guys. You have no
Hey.
idea.
But not today, so enough of the
No.
guys. Go back
Yeah.
to wherever you were, guys.
You go
And
to
because
today.
today we're talking about two ladies again.
We
right?
are. Before we get to those two ladies, I have to tell you probably the most fun comment that we got from the last episode, and I just posted this on social media last night, was from Laura P., who said, I love this comment. She said, Rebecca and Dr. Emma are like the Thelma and Louise of history podcasters. Such great chemistry.
I love that. Actually, my name is Emma Luisa, so
Oh, but you want to be Thelma. Let's be clear here.
I mean, that was a private conversation, Rebecca.
Oh,
But yes, I
I've
do
put
want
it
to be
out.
Thelma. I mean, everybody knows the story. It's a great movie,
Yeah.
not for the faint-hearted, and it's a hard movie too.
Mm-hmm.
These women are at their peak in their careers acting. You know, this is something I can talk about for a long time because I love this movie. And then a very young, very handsome Brad Pitt is also involved. So, I mean, if I have to be Thelma, as I must.
No, I think you did
So.
say you are Thelma. You didn't even give
Okay,
it.
just just making it easy for you. And I think Susan Sarandon is amazing. So
I love it.
it is a very good story. I mean, I don't know if anyone hasn't heard of Thelma and Louise, but do you want to just recap it really quickly in case
No.
somebody doesn't know?
No,
People know, right?
they know.
They know.
Don't need to waste time on
Not
movies
like
when
Charmed, where you had to explain for 20 minutes.
Okay, I have to tell you, and I don't have it up in front of me, but there was somebody I think on YouTube who was very excited that I
So
mentioned
you
Charmed.
texted a friend.
I did
Texted
not.
a friend and said, "Hey, please comment and say you love Charmed because I'm not looking good in my own show."
I put a message in the Charmed fan group, and I was like, "Hey guys." I mentioned the show. I did not. This was unsolicited. Thank you very much. And I was very happy that somebody else knew. Somebody else sent something about Lazarus too, because we had talked about the Phoenix and the Lazarus and all of that. So there's so many comments out there. I've been having so much fun reading through these. I think what I'm going to do is on my Patreon page, I have a community section, and I'm going to open up the community section to everybody to come and make suggestions or talk about the show there if they want to as well.
Yes. We can have also mean tweets. We could also have that.
Yeah.
That Dr. M is annoying. Her voice is just like, a cat. I don't know.
Like nails on a chalkboard.
Yes, exactly. That's
people
how it
say
feels.
that.
When I hear it, I'm like, ooh.
Okay, enough.
Let's get to the parallel.
Yeah, let's get to it because I am excited about the women that we're talking about today. One of them was mentioned in the last episode, and I got really excited about her and said I wanted to do an episode on her, and Emma was like, let's do it, and that was Margaret of Austria.
Margaret of Austria, very connected to the Tudor court, extremely connected to the Tudor court, but also to the Spanish court. And she is a contemporary of people we've talked about already almost.
Mm-hmm.
Like she's only 5 years older than Catherine of Aragon, about the same age as Juana of Castile, from the Trastamara dynasty, for those who are listening and don't know that this is a program where we do Spanish too.
Yes.
And she is a powerhouse. And we'll talk about why, right? And the other person who we're talking about is maybe less known, would you reckon, Rebecca?
Definitely less known. At least for me, she's less. I knew very little about her before we talked about.
Okay. The thing, she's known largely as Margaret of Parma in Italy, now in Italy. But she also became Margaret of Austria. And the reason why is because she was the natural daughter. That's the term I like to use, because the illegitimate daughter of Charles V. And because of Margaret of Austria, Charles recognized Margaret. She became also Margaret of Austria. But then when she married the Duke of Parma, she's known as Margaret of Parma for posterity.
Okay.
So the names of the women are tricky, especially these women from the Habsburg dynasty. There's a lot of Marys of Austria, Margaret of Austria, and
Yes.
it's a bit difficult. So we'll try to keep it, to where we know who we're talking about each time, right?
Yeah, I think I told you yesterday when we were kind of talking about what we were going to do today that I got so confused by all
Right.
the
They come
names
from the
trying to
same family.
Right. Once you know that, then it kind of makes a little bit more sense. But let's look at where they came from, who they're connected to, because I think that's the absolutely fascinating part of their stories.
Right. So, in the sense of different, Margaret of Austria and Margaret of Parma, the difference is their birth at the beginning. Margaret of Austria, born in 1480, was born to Emperor Maximilian, Holy Roman Emperor, and a duchess in her own right, Duchess of Burgundy, Mary. So, I mean, she's the sister of Philip the Handsome, aka also known as Crybaby, in the boat with Juana of Castile when they were married and going to Spain because they became king and queen of Castile. But these guys were already ruling the Netherlands and the Holy Roman Empire. So
Okay.
that's where Margaret is raised, but she very early on, because she's a girl, she's used in these alliances that Maximilian is forging with Isabel and Fernando, and then he's trying to do it with Henry VII. She's a candidate to marry Henry VII when she's already a widow. And she married Catherine of Aragon's brother. I mean, this is all a mess. So we're going to try to uncover that. But she is the daughter of an emperor and a duchess in her own right, and empress because she's married to an emperor. On the other hand, Margaret of Parma is the daughter of Charles V, so the grandson of Maximilian and Mary, Duchess of Burgundy. But instead of being a daughter born out of marriage, she's born before he's married. The year that he's betrothed to Mary Tudor, 1522. And she's born to one of the servants of the Count of Lalaing, who was Seigneur de Montigny, who was one of the Flemish servants of Charles V. So her mother, Maria van der Geinst, was Flemish, and she was born in Flanders, even though she spent large parts of her life also in Italy because of her marriages. So very different birth, right? But end up in the same place, ruling the Netherlands. So that teaches you a lesson about how important the women really are in the Spanish monarchy, and especially the women connected to Charles V. He just becomes so powerful, has so many territories, and then his son too, Philip II, that they just need these women to manage all of their empire.
I think my mind was blown when I found out Margaret of Austria was the sister of Philip the Handsome.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I don't know why I didn't know that. But when I read that, when you sent me your notes on this, I read that and I went, holy cow, I had no idea. Like the connections are so close when we look at it that way.
You remember me mentioning last time we were talking about Catherine of Aragon and Isabel of Castile, how they were very similar because there was an ambassador once that said that. That ambassador was sent by Margaret of Austria to check on the portrait that a portrait painter that Margaret had sent to Catherine of Aragon had done of Mary Rose Tudor, most likely a portrait now in the National Gallery. It's a portrait where she wears a very big necklace that Isabella of Castile wears in one of her necklaces. She's holding now a perfume bottle, so she's been identified with Mary Magdalene, right?
Okay.
But under that perfume bottle, the X-rays say that she had a book.
Oh.
A book like Isabel of Castile is holding in the picture that Henry VIII, for example, had, and now is in the British Royal Collection. So these are all connected. That same necklace, it's been proposed that it could be a picture of Isabel of Castile, but that same necklace is in her will given to Catherine of Aragon, one of them. So she's the one to give it to Mary Rose Tudor, and she wears it to be portrayed as Princess of Castile, because what Margaret is doing in Flanders is raising the children of Juana the First of Castile and Philip the Fair in Michelin, in her palace, where Anne Boleyn goes later. So she has like a center of Renaissance education there. She raises Charles V, Mary of Hungary, Mary of Austria, not known later as Mary of Hungary because she marries the King of Hungary. Complex again with the names.
Yeah.
And the rest of those, and then Margaret of Parma too. When she finds out that Charles has an illegitimate daughter, she decides to raise her with her. And that's why she pushes for Charles to recognize Margaret of Parma finally. So Margaret of Austria never had children, but was the matriarch of the Habsburgs.
She seems just so fascinating to me. I feel like I should have a whole episode on her, or you should just write a book about her.
Yes, I think so too. If I had time, I did have two book projects that I'm finishing up, so maybe after that. But she is fascinating. There's brilliant work by in the realm of her artistic patronage, which was one of the most relevant in the Renaissance because she had the first portrait gallery, dynastic portrait gallery, recorded in Europe. In that palace that we're talking about, where she was raising these children, where there's pictures of Henry VII and Catherine of Aragon and Mary Tudor. There's great work done by Professor Dagmar Eichberger from Germany, but it's in German, a lot of it, especially her book, Leben mit Kunst, so living with pictures. So yes, I would argue that a big artistic biography of her patronage of Margaret of Austria would be amazing. She introduces a lot of things to the Tudor court. She's the one to send Torrigiano. She's the one to send the people who started the armories in Greenwich too. Not just things of art, things of warfare, and it's just a very advanced place, the Netherlands at that point.
I think sometimes I get confused and I try to figure out the timelines and where these people fit into Tudor history. So it helps when we can kind of take a look and go, well, they lived during this time and this is what kind of influence that they had on even the court of England.
So listen to this. So Margaret of Austria was born, 20 years before the arrival of the 16th century. So she was 20 at the turn of the century, right?
Okay.
She was betrothed first to the Dauphin of France for some time, but that didn't work out. And then to the brother of Catherine of Aragon, Prince John of Spain. And she went to Spain and she married him in Burgos. And she became pregnant. But Juan died. Some said of too much loving.
Yeah, overexertion.
Overexertion in the loving.
Yeah.
Margaret was pregnant and she very tragically lost that baby. But she stays in the Spanish court for another 2 years and she teaches Catherine of Aragon French. So she teaches her the love language right after she killed her brother with the love. She teaches Catherine, because that's one of the things that I think is very important to know. People tend to portray Catherine of Aragon as a prude, and she wasn't a prude. She spoke French, which was the language of love, and she, when the first years of her reign, we see the kind of courtly love that she has with Henry VIII is very sensual and very, it's very in tune with courtly culture too. So Margaret of Austria and Catherine of Aragon create a bond there that goes on till Margaret dies, because Margaret dies in 1530, in the midst of the divorce of Henry VIII and. In the case of Margaret of Parma, she's born in 1522, so the year that Charles is betrothed to Mary Tudor, future Mary I.
Okay.
Okay, and she dies in 1586, which means she goes on to live in the Elizabethan era. And what I want to point out, why it's very connected to the Tudors, because the Netherlands and England are very, very close by. England depends a lot on many things from the Netherlands. For example, most of the pictures painted in England would be painted on wood sent from the Netherlands that came from the Baltic region. So they were very connected. It's very close by, and these people had a lot of contact with the Tudor court.
I hope this isn't a dumb question, but the Netherlands is part of the Low Countries, right?
Right. And this is something that Alejandro Vergara explained very well when we were talking about carapaters. Because sometimes it's confusing, right? Mm-hmm. So in terms of territorial terms, there's a clear difference between the 15th and 16th centuries and then the 17th centuries when when there's a revolt from the Spanish rule of the Netherlands, and then there's another region that becomes, and there's the northern part and the southern part, and the southern part remains Catholic under the Spanish rule, and that eventually becomes Belgium,
Oh, okay.
roughly. And the other part is what becomes the Kingdom of Holland now. So we tend to like get confused about, for example, the difference between Dutch and Flemish paintings. So the Flemish paintings would be from people from that southern region that remain Catholics. Like, for example, Alejandro was talking about Clara Peters, but also he's a specialist in Rubens. And Rubens came from that. And those people remain connected to the Spanish monarchy. So that's why someone as talented as Rubens ends up in Spain. It's because in the southern Netherlands, the daughter of Philip II ends up ruling, Isabel Clara Eugenia. So the Spanish remain there with, but there's another territory that comes up, and it just, there's confusion there, but they're different terms.
I think I mentioned to you the other day that Mary of Hungary had a connection to Thomas Seymour, which I would love to learn more about because in the early 1540s, he was a diplomat and he was sent to the Low Countries as an ambassador and spoke with her. Yes.
We love the ambassadors, don't we?
I just think it's really interesting when you start connecting these people and you see who knew who and what they were discussing. And I feel like that's a period that I need to go back and revisit because I feel like he spent a lot of time over there.
So Mary of Hungary could have been in this episode of Parallel Lives, because really why I brought these two women together, Margaret of Austria and Margaret of Parma, and we can include Mary of Hungary in the middle, is because they ruled the Habsburg Netherlands in the name of Charles V and Philip II of Spain. So they are women connected by family bonds to them that become rulers of this. So that's why, for example, Mary of Hungary is the one who receives Holbein when Henry VIII is thinking of marrying Christina of Denmark, who is her niece.
Yeah,
and he paints that portrait that is now in the National Gallery.
She's the one who said she'd marry Henry if she had two heads.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I love it. Christina, and you see this picture, full length picture, beautiful, beautiful woman. And Henry liked it, and he was like, but think about this. For all he had done to get rid of Catherine of Aragon, then he wanted to marry another Habsburg. Catherine wasn't a Habsburg, but she was connected to them. So he was like, maybe that wasn't that bad. And Mary of Hungary also sends stuff to England via Erasmus, like portraits and things and she has great connections to women that we haven't brought up a lot in this podcast, but we should be talking about all the time. The daughters of Thomas More.
Yes.
So, for example, Margaret Roper, she has a close connection to her, and they're sending, especially think about it, during the years of the annulment, it wasn't just about Catherine of Aragon and Henry VIII. It was about the Catholics versus the new faith, right, that Henry was going to impose. So imagine the family of Sir Thomas More. After he, what happens to Sir Thomas More, remind me?
He loses his head.
He loses his head. So Christina wasn't that far off when she was thinking, Henry kind of chops off the head of people. So
Yeah.
Yeah. And in case of Margaret of Parma, she has a lot of trouble because of this conflict, confessional conflict, religious conflict is getting out of hand, really. And Philip II of Spain sends the Duke of Alba to kind of like control the situation. And Margaret is like, I don't think the Duke of Alba is going to be well received here. And he's like, don't worry, he'll be fine. And it wasn't, because he should have listened to Margaret of Parma, but he didn't. I mean, it was just inevitable, those big, huge empires don't always sustain time, so it was also time for that area to become independent too. I mean, it's just the evolution of time, really, too.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. But these women are all connected in that sense. They all are governors of the Netherlands in the names of the men that are absent because they're ruling other places like Spain or Charles V travels all around Europe, really.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I feel like these women, we talk about these women a lot, and you've alluded to arts and patronage already in art with these women. And I'd like to go into that a little bit further because we always talk about these women in particular being marketing gurus, right?
Oh, yes. These
And
are the marketing gurus. These are the ones to set the standard for everyone else. And they learn from the cool guy, bringing up again cool guys. So actually, the marketing guru, the OG marketing guru, is Emperor Maximilian the First. Emperor Maximilian the First, who raises Margaret of Austria, obviously, because this is the dad, but also Mary of Hungary is sent to him. So we see now the connections again, right? This guy is just using people like Jura to do his propaganda. So it's really Maximilian, the marketing dad, who teaches these two very key women, Margaret of Austria and Margaret of Hungary. And then these two women are the ones to teach Margaret of Parma. So, I mean,
yes,
Margaret of Hungary could have been perfectly fine in this episode. I just wanted to use the first and last example, because then it becomes a different thing with this Isabel Clara Eugenia, who is the daughter of Philip II, who becomes co-ruler of the Netherlands. It's a totally different
yeah.
time and a different kind of
I
deal.
think we have to go back a little bit because I think you misspoke because there's so many Margarets. You said Margaret of Hungary, but I think you meant Mary of Hungary.
Mary of Hungary. There's no Margaret of Hungary. You're right.
There's a lot of
And maybe
Margarets.
she's there. We haven't. I knew this episode was going to get tricky. I'm sorry
Yeah.
to the listeners if you get confused with the names. I get confused with the names. I've been studying this women for years. So
Yeah.
it's basically Maximilian the Emperor. Yeah.
Yep.
He marries a Mary,
Yeah, right.
Duchess of Burgundy. And then he has Philip the Fair and Margaret of Austria. Yes. And then
Yes.
Philip the Fair has Charles V with Juana the First of Castile. And then Charles V is the one who has Margaret of Parma with the servant of the Count of Lalaine.
Yeah. Okay. So we have like 3 generations here.
Yeah.
Okay.
And Mary of Hungary is Charles V's sister.
There we go.
And also daughter of crybaby Philip the Handsome and Juana the First of Castile. Younger than Charles. Born in the toilet in 1500.
Yeah. I love all of these little anecdotes that we have for these historical.
In Ghent. In Ghent, where there had been a revolution in the arts, especially in the Netherlands, and this is something that people like Giorgio Vasari, who wrote about the lives of the famous artists, wrote about. Flanders and the Netherlands have specialized a lot in miniatures, in illumination of manuscripts and miniatures. Now we see the connections to the artists in the Tudor court, right?
Yeah.
And Ghent was one of those centers where Charles was born, in the toilet. It was a center of art production, of illumination. Bruges was the other one. So the first 2 women artists to be in the Tudor court recorded, can be a third one from Italy, but let's leave her aside for now. Susanna Horenboot and Lavina Turnlake, they come from those 2 centers, Ghent, Bruges. They're 2 centers of production of manuscript illumination that are very outstanding.
I have a really difficult time taking you seriously when you say that he was born in the toilet repeatedly.
He was born in the toilet. What do you want me to say? It's a fact. It's a historical fact.
I just love that story so much.
It does speak to Juana's success in having children, really. She because one of the reasons why women died very frequently was during childbirth, and she apparently had no problem to have her baby. So it was an advantage to be able to be like, oh, baby's coming. He's here. You know,
It just
some
so
women
happened.
are like that. Good for them.
Yeah, she just so happened to be in the bathroom when it happened.
I mean, where are you going to go and have it in the middle of the Grand Salon there in Ghent? Oh, wait a second.
Okay, so I think I finally have my head wrapped around this family tree.
Yes.
I now understand we're kind of looking at three generations of people in
Hmm.
this episode, and it makes more sense now why their lives were paralleled.
Exactly. They're all connected by family ties, but also because of the physical places they shared. For example, because Margaret of Austria educated Mary of Hungary and Margaret of Parma in Michelin, in that palace where she had the first portrait gallery recorded in the history of Europe,
Wow.
with pictures of Henry VII, Catherine of Aragon, Mary Tudor, and others, and Isabel of Castile and her daughters. So there was, this is a place that probably they were walking around and speaking about these people when they were doing their history lessons. This is a place that Anne Boleyn was at too.
Right.
Right. So she met, she had, Margaret of Austria had not just Mary of Hungary, but also her other nieces. Because Juana and Felipe have six children. Two remain in Spain because of the travels. So we talked about that. But four of them were there. And then she has more people from that court. And she has leading artists working for her. Bernard Manorlet paints pictures of the girls and does art for her. She also recruits someone like Pietro Torrigiano, who is recorded a payment to him where he's fixing a terracotta bust of Mary Rose Tudor when she's betrothed to Charles, future Charles V. And Professor Felipe Pereda from Harvard University has identified this piece in Harvard University in their museum because the bust of the woman has a break in the neck when you see it in the infrared. So
Oh.
it's the one that he was paid to repair, and we know that.
I wonder how I
And
got damaged.
shortly after that, and I thought you would like this, there's a record of a statue of Hercules made of earth given to Henry the Tool. Why? Because the marketing mothers like Margaret of Austria and Catherine of Aragon are very smart. He's like, tell him he's like Hercules, he'll do whatever you want. She gives him a statue made of earth. So if it's made of earth, it's Torrigiano. We know that because he introduces that medium into the Tudor court.
Yeah.
He gives him a set of tapestries because they meet in Tournai in 1514, the year after he wins. He captures those French cities.
Yeah.
Margaret is like giving him gifts and saying, "You're the best. You're the most handsomest king of England there ever was. Here's some tapestries." Hercules, probably with his face. And Henry
Probably.
was, so Henry had a close relationship with Margaret also. So this is Margaret helped to build the Renaissance court of Henry VIII and Catherine of Aragon. But by the time Margaret of Parma is in charge, Elizabeth doesn't want to know anything about the Spanish or the Habsburgs, right?
All
Because
right.
the
Yeah.
rivals.
Yeah.
And that has a reflection in her portraiture, I'm afraid.
It
She
does,
doesn't
doesn't
have
it?
she doesn't have the Antonis Moores and the Bernard Banorles, and she doesn't. Occasionally, she rules for a long time. She has some good
Yeah.
painter, but usually portraiture is good in the until Mary Tudor dies. I
I
mean,
don't I don't think I can name one artist who painted a portrait of Elizabeth the First.
yeah, she has Hilliard paint her miniatures. Those are very good. He's
Oh
a very
yeah,
good
that's right.
miniaturist, and he paints larger pictures of her. Lavina Turnley give her many pictures of her in her New Year's. And with Hilliard writes a book on the art of illumination where he mentions a conversation, and this has been studied very well by Elizabeth Goldring, who wrote about Hilliard. And in this book about the art of illumination, he mentions when he's painting Elizabeth that he's very uneasy because she wants to be painted outside because she thinks the light is better. And she goes on a speech about how she thinks that the Italians are the best at painting, but others do these kind of shadows. So she knows about it. It's just she's not able to bring the best because she doesn't have those connections to the best artists at the time, who are still the Flemish and the Italians that are working for the Spanish monarchy.
Yeah. I had never thought of that before. That's interesting that you brought that up. See, I never know. I never know what I'm going to learn from you in these episodes.
Well, you just have to compare any of Elizabeth's portraits to Antonis More's portrait of Mary the First in the Prado Museum in Alejandro Vergara's collection, and they speak for themselves. Just
Yeah.
it's. Oh, when are we going to go to see this portrait, Rebecca?
Next year,
Next year?
2026.
Well, let us know, guys, if you would be willing to come and join us to go see Mary Tudor. She's been there for a long time.
Yeah.
That picture was sent to Mary of Hungary as soon as it was, and she kept it. So the palace of Michelin that Margaret of Austria had, then all those paintings, some of them got moved to Coudenbeck, to another palace that Mary of Hungary had, and the picture of Mary Tudor was there, and then it was sent to Spain, and then Charles V takes the picture of Mary the First with him when he retires to a monastery.
That's
Well, she was the
interesting.
Queen of Spain at the time. I think we forget that when Charles V goes to retirement, Philip II becomes King of Spain. Mary Tudor is Queen of Spain.
Yeah, but isn't it a little weird because at one point she was betrothed to Charles V?
That's what I'm saying. That's what I was trying to convey.
Oh, I went there. I got it. I knew what you were
But
doing.
at this point, she is his daughter-in-law.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Maybe he still had the hots for her. What am I doing? I'm losing the
Yeah.
plot here.
No, but he didn't, because he was with Maria van der Geenst in 1522 and had Margaret of Parma. So, I mean, he was
Yeah.
he was fine.
He was fine.
He was fine. I think Mary was just his dearest cousin that he knew. He met in person. Charles did go to England several times.
Yeah.
And I think he just was proud that Mary was finally a queen and hoping that she was pregnant because, Dr. Peter Svefel has argued very convincingly that Mary's pregnant in that portrait. So the future king of Spain is in her belly.
Yes, and that is very important.
That would have been, imagine that, if Philip II of Spain and Mary the First of England and Ireland would have had a baby
Right.
boy.
Who would have also been King of England in
King
Ireland.
of England and Ireland, and then he would have been a Lord of the Netherlands. All the titles that Philip had.
Wow.
The empire was elective, and when Charles retires, that's divided, but not the Habsburg Netherlands. The empire is one thing, and the Duchy of Burgundy and all that is different, and that still is Philip II. That's why Margaret of Parma then is his governor, because he continues to be the ruler. That's why when he is becoming an old man because he lives until 1598, so he dies 5 years before Elizabeth I. When he realizes that this is going to be so difficult, he asks his favorite daughter, Isabel Eugenia, to go and rule there with her husband, who is also her cousin, because this is what the Habsburgs do.
Mm-hmm.
Actually, their motto was, the other ones can fight wars, we marry each other. Yikes.
Yeah, I don't know that I would be proud of that one.
Austria marries while the rest go for war, and they married their cousins. I mean, Philip II's fourth wife is his niece.
When you think of it this way, now that you've said it the way that you have about the marrying.
Did I make it weird? Because it's weird.
No, I don't think I think it helps me understand a little bit better the pressure that was on Mary the First and Philip to have an heir, because that heir would have been so powerful had they survived.
And especially to be brave enough, she was in her late 30s.
Yeah.
She'd never, she was a virgin. To go to like be like, well, we'll have to see what happens, and to have faith that was going to go through.
Yeah.
It was unfortunate that she did have a couple pregnancies. This is one of my biggest, pet peeves, is when people talk about phantom pregnancies of Mary the First. I don't know why they do that, because, first of all, she was never seen by a gynecologist, so we don't, know what happened there. And then Peter Stifel again has argued the ambassadors mention things. I'm not going to go into details because it's a bit gruesome and all that, but why doubt that, It's just very misogynistic. And it's because she was a Catholic, and then, the Catholic faith didn't continue in England. And that's why it's all been made into this big mess, that she had phantom pregnancies and Philip hated her and she was
Yeah.
ugly and all the things we've heard, and she was a fanatic. All these things that we've heard of Mary the First, she was far more complex than that. Was she perfect? No. Was she
I,
better than her father? A million
yeah.
times.
I think that's one of the reasons why I am so passionate about telling the stories of women from this time period,
Yeah.
because
And
there's so much of that happening.
these women that we're talking about, parallel lives again, Margaret of Austria, and they are all connected to Mary. And even though most of them don't meet them, because Charles does meet them, but not the rest, they are their dearest cousins. And that's the way they refer to each other. They love each other. They send each other pictures. So, for example, Mary receives 10 pairs of gloves, like those gloves that she wears in the Antonis More portrait. When we go to room 56, hopefully with Alejandro, who might take us around, if he's not very busy, the women that are portrayed, and the men, because we talk about cool dudes too, that are
Yeah.
portrayed in those portraits wear the same gloves. And Alejandro installed had an installation made there so you can smell what those gloves used to smell like, because these gloves were perfumed. The Renaissance didn't smell that well. I know we think it as very colorful and pretty, but it wasn't usually the smells were not the best. So these gloves were a way. So you go into somewhere and you're like, oh, I'm just gonna put my glove on my nose for a sec. And you can press a button. Actually, my daughter Susan loved it. I thought it was brilliant, because he
Yeah.
did do an exhibition on pictures of flowers and the scents of those bouquets. So
Wow.
yeah,
What a
yeah.
great way to get immersed into the history. I love that idea.
Well, think about how the sense of smell is not really something that we experience too much in museums.
Yeah.
So I thought that was very brilliant to bring it up. And he worked with an actual perfumist, with a professional. They're always very professional. They have great ideas and innovative ideas, but they always only work with the best.
I can't wait to go. I can't. We've been talking about the Prado for so long and talking about the beautiful artworks. And,
Yes.
I just,
We'll be able to see pictures of Mary of Hungary, for example, Margaret of Austria, who no picture of Margaret of Austria in the Prado, I think. Now somebody's gonna be like, yes, there's one. But for example, Margaret of Parma was also painted by Antonis More in a very stunning depiction that I think is very similar to the Antonis More's portrait of Mary, because she's looking at you and she's in charge. And that's what I think Antonis More knew how to do when he portrayed the women who were in charge. He knew how to convey that idea of she's looking at you like, get a move on, do what I asked you to do. And,
yeah. Yeah,
yeah.
shows the power behind it.
Yeah, and she has been vindicated lately, Margaret of Parma, because she's less known than the other, Mary of Hungary, who was vindicated largely in the first edition of the Female Perspective in the Prado. There's documentaries to her in their website and everything. You can go and check that out, because she owned the largest collection of Titians, and she was the leading Renaissance patron of the arts. But in the case of Margaret of Parma, last year they had an exhibition on her in Oudenaarde. I never know how to pronounce these names in Belgium. If anybody from Belgium is listening, please let us know how you pronounce this. Last year there was a large exhibition dedicated to her, because she was a big deal and she should be vindicated. So you can check out the catalog for that. All the resources in the Female Perspective in the Prado, also for Mary of Hungary. And in the case of Margaret of Austria, I would recommend you the works of Dagmar Eichberger. There was a very cool exhibition that she curated, Dagmar Eichberger, who's super nice, by the way, comparing her to Margaret of York.
Oh,
There you go.
interesting.
Because
Margaret
Margaret of
of
York
York.
became Duchess of Burgundy.
Yes. Oh,
And she was a leading patron of the literature, the arts, and that. So they're all connected.
They really are. This is the part about studying history that I absolutely love when you can find all these connections between people. I can't even tell you. Like, I just want to go do a bunch of research now. I want to dive in and
Yeah.
just dig and see more connections.
I'm going to tell a very cool anecdote that connects Margaret of Austria and Catherine of Aragon, and just so you can see how important these women are in the spread of Renaissance portraiture. Okay,
Yeah.
so Margaret marries, we said, John of Spain. He dies. She's pregnant. She loses the baby. She then goes and marries the Duke of Savoy, and he
Okay.
dies too. So Margaret, I don't know, Margaret, were you doing something to these men? And then she's a widow, so she's a Dowager Duchess of Savoy, and she becomes the governor of the Habsburg Netherlands, right?
Hmm.
After. In 1505, Philip Handsome, crybaby, is thinking, you know what? Henry the seventh needs a wife. So I'm going to send two pictures of my dear sister, Margaret of Austria, to him because she's now, single again. And she sends two pictures to him with an ambassador. And the ambassador arrives, but because Philip is king of Castile with Joanna, he goes first to visit Catherine of Aragon because she's the sister of Joanna. So he has to
Yeah.
go and pay his respects, right?
Yeah.
Catherine, her mother had just died, and she is also involved in another marriage project for Henry VII to marry him either to Juana, her sister, or to her other single cousin, Juana of Trastamara, who is the Dowager Queen of Naples. Okay, bear with me.
Now we got two Juanas.
Now we have two Juanas and a million Margarets and some Marys thrown in there too, and a Catherine. So the imperial ambassador arrives and he says, "Oh, well, I can't speak German too well, so I won't do it in German, but something along the lines of, hi, how's everyone, blah, blah, blah." And he says, "I brought two pictures for the King of England to see his new bride." And Catherine says, "Can I see them?" And he's like, "Of course." So he brings them, right? And she's,
Yeah.
"Oh, okay, okay." One of them is still in the British Royal Collection, and you can go and check it out. We can put
Mm.
it in the video. Now I'm going to make Rebecca work a little bit more and put it in the video. And after the imperial ambassador leaves, Catherine says to the Spanish ambassador, the other guy, who is telling the story to Fernando of Aragon in his report, she said, "Mitchell Sidda would do a much better job than this." And when you see the picture of Margaret, it's not very good.
Oh.
Which means, and if you see the pictures of Sita, the most famous one in Vienna, allegedly of Catherine of Aragon, where she's looking down,
Yeah.
necklace with the K's, we all know that. The difference in the quality, like Alejandro also talks about, the quality in the portraiture of Mitchell Sita with this picture of Margaret of Austria is outstanding. Catherine of Aragon is only 19 years old, but she already knows this.
Wow.
And she doesn't want her good friend to have to put up with Henry VII, probably. And she's big rivals with Philip the Handsome. Catherine of Aragon and Philip the Handsome hated each other. Actually, she asks him to dance when he arrives, and he's like, "No, I'm still seasick."
Oh, wow. What a jerk.
He was a jerk. He didn't let Juana and Catherine be together more than an hour, and they were there for almost a month.
Yeah, he was
How
afraid.
cruel is that?
He was
Not be able to
afraid.
see your sister?
Yeah.
That's cruel.
What a
Cruel.
controlling husband.
Yeah, and not that handsome. Can we put a picture of him, please? I think people need to know.
We'll include a picture of everybody
Please
we've talked
comment
about.
on the looks of, we're not going to comment only on the women's looks. Let's comment on the guys' looks. We're going to put a picture of Charles V too, because wow, what a catch.
What a
And then they're like, well, Empress Isabel, because Charles V ends up marrying Isabella of Portugal,
yeah.
who was known to be a very beautiful woman. And they're like, and they fell in love. I fell in love. Charles fell in love with her. And she was like, okay, now I'm married, because what else am I going to do?
Right. Yeah.
Because he was hideous. He couldn't close his mouth. His jaw was so big. His
Wow.
lower jaw was so big.
Let's just say it wasn't always a love story, was it?
No, it wasn't. And since we like to comment so much on the looks of the women and how Mary was the first was ugly and old and
Yeah.
decrepit, Charles V was hideous. And Philip the Handsome is just a marketing tool. It's not real. He wasn't handsome.
You be the judge. I am
Yes.
staying out of this.
I think, but you know what? To someone like Margaret of Austria, that didn't matter.
Yeah.
It was
Well,
all about duty. It was all about, you know, respecting her. So she worked tirelessly for Charles V, for her nephew. And so did Catherine of Aragon.
yeah.
It's very important that we understand that these women are not independent. Charles, even though he's younger than Catherine and Margaret, when Maximilian dies and then Fernando dies, he is the pater familias. He is the responsible male in the family. So they all bow to him and work for him. That's the truth. That's why when Charles goes to England, who is the last person he says hi to when he arrives to Hampton Court?
Oh gosh, I don't even know. Maybe I do and I've just forgotten.
There's a very cool description of him arriving and saying hi to everyone, taking his hat off in front of Henry VIII. It's a sign of respect, you know, taking your hat off in front. He's an emperor. He could have not done it. And then the description says he walks up some stairs and his aunt, Queen Catherine, is waiting at the top of the stairs. And he kneels in front of her, takes off his hat and kneels in front of her. And she smiles and she goes, rise.
That must have
Right.
felt so good.
Oh, that must have felt so good. And they were both tiny but mighty, you know?
Yeah. Yeah.
That's why they were in the top of the stairs and not down there with Henry, who was 6'2".
Oh, I feel like this is always so much fun doing these parallel lives.
Maybe
And
we could cast someone for Charles V today.
what?
How about Pedro Pascal? I want to put Pedro Pascal in this.
You just said Charles V was ugly. Why would you put Pedro in there?
Because Pedro can play any role.
He can make himself ugly.
Yeah, even he'll be cute, even being ugly. You know what I mean?
I do like him. He's got a great sense of humor.
Oh, he can be
too.
the Spanish ambassador.
Oh, you sure you don't want Henry Cavill cast in that role as well?
Sure, put a wig on the man. No. He couldn't do a Spanish accent. That's the thing. You have to cast people who speak Spanish for the Spanish roles. So the Spanish ambassador has to be someone who speaks Spanish perfectly. Pedro Pascal.
I'll make sure to reach out to
Jose
my...
Pedro Balmaceda Pascal, to be more precise, is his name.
Well, I'm going to reach out to him and his
Yes,
people and tell
Pedro,
them.
please, por favor, Pedro, llámanos.
Yeah. I'll be like, can you please come on our show? We really want to talk to you.
And bring Henry Cavill with you.
Can
If
you?
we pull that off, Rebecca,
We would be legends.
we would be legends. You know,
All right. If anybody's
we
got
are legends. We're
connections.
becoming legends with Thelma and Louise. So
That's true. Yeah. I mean, if you're listening or watching right now and you have connections to these people and think you can help us make this happen, let us know because we're all for it.
yeah.
I think the whole episode would be me blushing and giggling.
And me talking too much and very loud.
I see. I love that we know each other so well.
Yeah. I'd do something, I don't know. I'd break a pen in my head or something like that. I always do like really awkward things when I'm very nervous.
Oh, me too. I sweat a lot. That's probably my biggest downfall.
No, I'm not the one who sweat, but I don't know. I'll trip over and I'll fall or
Oh.
it's normal. You get nervous, your nervous system is alert.
Yeah. Good thing you'll be sitting behind your computer so
I
you
won't be
won't
nervous
fall.
with these guys. I mean, be just like pals, you know?
Really? I'd be over here like just sweating profusely and just quiet and not
Come on,
say
my
a word.
friend, she's fine. And you're like, you're just covered in sweat.
Exactly.
Is
Oh
she
my,
okay? She'll be fine. She's just breathing in the
yeah.
bag. Can you see she's breathing in a bag?
Oh my gosh. I have a little anecdote to tell about the sweating
Oh,
thing because I feel like people need to understand there's a story behind this, and I am not good around celebrities. Okay.
okay.
So, my ex-husband worked in an industry where I got to see a lot of concerts in person and got to meet famous bands and my favorite bands. And back in the early 2000s, I got to meet my favorite band at the time, Creed. Okay. Creed was like
Ooh,
my
it is
favorite.
very good.
I had such a crush on the frontman Scott Stapp at the time. I'm also much taller than him, which is normal in my life,
You
but
must telling everyone, Rebecca. Come on.
no, it sucks. But anyway, so I get to take a picture with the band. And of course, I situated myself right next to Scott Stapp because I was like, I want a picture next to this famous guy that I have this huge crush on. So we see them. I'm so nervous the whole time. I'm just so nervous. We take the picture, and like 3 weeks later, we get a copy of the picture. And in it, I have like giant pit stains. All I could think about was, oh my gosh, this is so
They're like
embarrassing.
at the same level as his eyes.
Yeah, pretty much.
Nice,
All I could
nice.
think about was, oh my gosh, Scott Stapp saw my giant pit stains. I'm so mortified by this.
Nah, you
But
can just edit them out of the picture now.
this is just how I am around famous people. I can't, I don't know what to do. It's like, what do I do
I,
with my hands?
I've never met anyone famous. I don't know.
Oh, you would be
Only
much
you.
better. Yeah, I've met
You're the most
so
famous
many.
person I know,
Oh,
Rebecca.
shut up. I'm not famous at all. No, no, thank you,
People
though.
know you. People know you.
Oh, anyway, enough about me. Have we covered everything in our parallel lives of Margaret
I
of
don't
Austria?
know. I
I
don't know
know.
if we had a thing. I don't know if we covered everything. Did
I
we?
I don't
You're in
know.
charge of keeping track.
I know, but then it's like I said earlier, I kind of lost the plot and then forgot where we were and got distracted.
Well, I think to just boil it down to something important is an idea that we circle back and back again in the podcast is the importance of the women connected to the Spanish monarchy and the Austrian Empire, right?
Yeah.
And how because these men are giving women power, they become very efficient. I think it's because they knew their shortcomings as women and they knew they only had one shot. So they were very professional at doing it well. And then because they were in charge largely of the domestic things, they were involved in the creation of all these things that we love, like the portraits and the jewels and the. So a lot of the stuff that has survived to this day for us was we say always say by Antonis More, by Jacopo da Trezzo, by yeah, with Margaret of Austria saying do it like this, do it like that.
Yeah.
It's for here, it's for there, talking about it. So I think that's very important to know. It's the artists with the patron. And the patron has an intention, and these women are very smart and they market the Habsburgs very well.
Yes. I definitely want to continue this conversation over on Patreon in my community. And there is going to be a link in the show notes because I feel like when we do these episodes, there's so much more we can talk about.
Yeah.
And I know people are listening and they have questions about things that maybe we didn't cover. And I want that to be that safe place for people to go where we can all just come together and talk about the history that we love. So head to my Patreon page. If you go to a website, it's just patreon.com/Tudors Dynasty. Otherwise, like I said, there'll be a link in the show note. And while you're there, if you want to support the show and support Dr. Emma and me, you can do so. And by doing so, you get commercial-free episodes, which I know some people hate commercials, but that's the only way to make money these days doing a podcast. So if you want commercial-free, you can become a patron. You also get early access, exclusive content, and I'm just so grateful for all of my patrons over on Patreon over the last 8 years. It's been absolutely insane. And if you like Dr. Emma and me, it's every Thursday. You get to put up with me and Emma, and we have fun. If you want something a little bit different, Tuesdays is my interviews with an author or historian, and then on Sundays I still have the episodes where we focus on just one person in history, where I kind of just narrate the story. So there's a little bit of everything.
You're a
That
busy
way.
woman, Rebecca.
Yes.
Okay, I'll say one last thing about Margaret of Parma.
Okay.
She will be part of the exhibition I'm curating that will open most likely. The date is confirmed 9th of July in the British
Ooh.
Museum in the coins and medals department. Um, I'll be there on the 10th and 11th of July. So if anyone, is willing to hear me talk some more about these
Yeah.
women, I will definitely be there. I'm very excited. This is the first exhibition I'm curating. Um, I'm, it's very exciting. It's focused on medals, portrait medals. There's also a coin of Isabel of Castile, but mainly medals. And you will be able to see that in the case of Margaret of Parma, there's a picture of her in the medal, obviously, in one side, but the other side there's an allegory of her rule of the Netherlands. It's a very cool female figure with a sword in one hand, and it's just you can see that she's like, I'm powerful, look at me.
Yes.
So I encourage everyone this summer. It'll run until October. So if you are going to be in London this summer, I'm really excited. Yes,
I
yes,
will.
Rebecca will be there. I'll be there. I'll do a video for those of you. I know not everybody. London is very expensive and it's very far away for a lot of you. So I will take you in a couple of videos there. I'm sure I'll have time to do that. But yes, I'm so
Emma, I
excited.
am so happy for you and I am so proud of you for getting this exhibition. Like
Yes,
this is a big deal and
yes.
I cannot wait to see it in person because I know how hard you've worked at this.
Yes, it's going to be called Female Portrait Medals as Visual Propaganda in Renaissance Europe and remind everyone that it's not just the women from the Spanish monarchy and the empire, but the most happy medal will be there. There will be medals of Elizabeth I and Mary Tudor, especially, connections between women and connections between, for example, Elizabeth and her mother Anne Boleyn. So I know that's a a
Yes.
topic of high interest. So I think people are going to like it, but they're also going to see how these women from the Spanish monarchy and the Holy Roman Empire were inspiration to the Tudor women. So it's
Yeah.
going to open a new perspective that Tudor England was not was part of Renaissance Europe as let me say this is going to be super controversial, as I think England is part of Europe, you know?
Ooh, wow.
Whoa! Oh my God, I'm going to get so much hate. Sorry, I'm a European. What do you want me to say?
There's nothing wrong with that. There's
Yeah.
nothing wrong with that.
I think you
Emma,
can be proud of being I'm proud of being
yeah,
Spanish, but I'm also proud of being European more
yeah,
than ever.
be proud of it.
Yes.
Own it.
Yeah.
Well, Emma, I enjoy every Thursday episode of Dr. Emma and Me that we
I
get
do
to do
too.
together. It's like just getting to sit down with a best friend over a coffee or water or whatever and just chatting about what you're passionate about.
Yeah, and I
So
get to sit down with you.
I love it.
I'm only joking.
I know. We tease, don't we?
We tease.
We do a lot. But thank you again for co-hosting this episode with me today on Margaret of Austria and Margaret of Parma. And I can't wait to talk about next week's topic as well.
Ooh, surprise, surprise.
I know. So we'll see everybody next Thursday. Thanks,
Yeah.
Emma.
Have a great day, guys.